Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Heir's Lair. I'm your host, Jonathan Taylor. For this week's video, I thought I would continue my streak of looking into various Romanian language books, but this time I'm going a little bit beyond my typical age range and looking at a book that has been part of my personal library since it first came out during my childhood. And that book is How the Romanian People Was Born, written by Neagu Juvara, with illustrations by Radu Olteanu and Simona Bucan, published in 2001 by Humanitas Junior, or Junior, depending on how you wish to pronounce it. Despite this channel not covering Romanian language books typically, or even or even with any regularity, the name Humanitas or the publishing house Humanitas has come up every now and then on my channel. The book I reviewed last week, for example, was also published by them, as you can see. So it will be interesting to see if the junior branch of this publishing house has a similar regard when it comes to quality. Before I delve into that, however, I do have to make a confession, because as I said, I've had this book since childhood, and in fact, I think I was gifted it when it was when it was brand new, and I started reading it as soon as it fell in my hands, and I made it past the halfway point of this book in one sitting, and then got bored and put it away. And when my dad came to check on me a little later in the day and asked about this book, I told him that I had finished it, which, yeah, I have to say was a lie. Sorry, Dad, I didn't finish it at the time. It is really only now, when I decided to make a review of it, that I actually got to finishing it. I did finish it twice though, so I don't know if that makes a difference, but but I thought I'd tell you in case you were curious enough to want to find out. Anyway, confession aside, my impressions of this book in summary are this historical presentation is very much saved by the illustrations. That is not to say that the text within it is bad. In fact, the information it contains is, I will say, quite effectively presented, and it was able to expand my understanding of the the topics it presents. So to that end, I recognize that there is a merit to it. The real problem with the text is not really in the content, or okay, the content has some issues, but it's not but that's not the biggest issue with the text in general, but rather it's delivery, because the author writes for what he thinks his audience would be interested in finding out, not necessarily and that doesn't necessarily match with what they would actually be interested in, which in turn makes this book sometimes a little bit too vague or a little bit too obtuse to really reach its full potential. Still, I can safely say that it held my attention, and that I, as I've already said, had my understanding of the topics that it explores expanded. So, if you know of any children who are familiar enough with the Romanian language to read this book and would otherwise also be interested in reading it, well then and I can say that it is not the worst gift that they could receive. And now that I'm done with the general impressions, it's time I delved into some specifics. Aside from an introduction into the prehistory and geography of Romania, as well as some moments where the author flashes forward to beyond the scope of his book, the events that are described within this book cover a time span of roughly 2,000 years, from the 6th century BCE to the 14th century CE. So between the first the first time there are from the first documents from the first documented accounts of the people living in what is currently Romania, to the foundation of the principalities that would later coalesce and form Romania. And it is a pretty tall order to bring to condense that kind of time interval into 60 pages, particularly for a child audience. But I will credit the author because while it is a tall order, he does actually take the right steps when it comes to doing so, and he knows exactly what moments and what segments would be most relevant within the transformation process that he is trying to describe, and he is capable of bridging these moments and sequences quite effectively together in an account that excuse me just a moment as I form this sentence in an account that manages to effectively manages to mirror the various influences exercised throughout history upon this upon this area, and how it is that they flow in and out of each other. This text isn't just dry academia dumbed down, however, because the various segments of this interval are actually presented in terms of their are actually presented through narrativization to some extent, with the author picking out an important figure from these respective segments, and building the narrative of his choice around them and around their around their progression. While that is effective at streamlining the story and making it streamlining this this account and making it more and make it simpler and potentially more compelling to follow. Unfortunately, that decision also leaves also has some unintended and unacademic side effects. First of all, the fact that the author kind of leans a little bit too much into nationalistic myth making to truly be to truly create an objective historical presentation. He says that he believes in the truth behind the myth, but he doesn't really seem to care enough about the truth to fully isolate it from the from the actual myth. And indeed, there are some parts of the book where he actually presents the myth as fact, which, not a good look. Also, his framing of focusing on specific figures from within from Romania's past has the unfortunate effect of leaning into great man theory, and therefore ignoring a lot of the influences that would potentially otherwise be of note within the greater context that the events described would actually be influenced by. There are still occasions where he is able to effectively use and present these influences, but there are unfortunately a few too many moments where he leans into great man theory, and therefore it doesn't really have, and therefore taking away from the intrigue that this from the intrigue or from the immersion from from the interest that this or from the historical validity that this that this text presents. And these are really the main issues I can recognize as a non-trained historian can recognize with the historical presentation of this book. If we are to go into what is and what is more or less my forte, as in the narrative presentation, well, then this book unfortunately has a few more faults. The first and lightest of these is the fact that the author leans quite a bit into Christian tales and symbology, and I'm not necessarily sure that any child now or at the time would really be as interested within this, within these Christian or Christianity references that he, that he uses in order to fully connect with the text, to the extent that he would want to, to the extent that he would want his audience to connect with. When you also consider the fact that this octogenarian anti-communist refers to certain people as advanced civilizations and calls others, particularly those coming from the, particularly those stemming from, from the east of these advanced cultures as inferior, or the epithet yellow-skinned is used, as well as savage. Yeah, you can really throw a lot of claims about historical objectivity out the window at that point. If you were to compare this book to something like Horrible Histories, which I would maintain is the gold standard when it comes to children's history books, you'll find that while Horrible Histories is a little bit more tongue-in-cheek and a little bit more focused on the ways in which historical events are ridiculous, they are nevertheless still a little bit more even-handed when it comes to both their praise and their criticisms, and they do not need to rely in any way on racialized epithets to get their point across. Additionally, they have a pretty good grasp on how to present people within their regular, everyday lives. And I'm not just talking about the elites of the day, but also, commoners of the day, allowing for a presentation that is both gritty and logical, while also still being playful and insightful. A combination that is, I have to say works very well with with this audience, or with a child audience. This book, however, does not really, does not try to get into that. It doesn't really have to, but I recognize it would potentially, it could have potentially been to its advantage to question things, to question things a little bit more and explore topics from the perspective that they could be, that they could present things that are unpleasant. Instead, this is very close to just being propaganda, this particular book. Thankfully, the illustrations do a lot to pick up the slack that that the text leaves behind. While they aren't particularly realistic, they are still detailed and dynamic, adding in plenty of grit, plenty of variety, and therefore plenty of livelihood within the actual text, and allowing the the information that it that it puts forth on the page to to stand out in a more intriguing manner. Overall, while there are some interesting insights in between the thick covers of this thing, reading through it comes across more like more like your grandfather is stumbling through some kind of text that is meant to be profound about what it means to be an adult. While there are occasionally good points, it is still a slog to go through. My final rating for How the Romanian People Was Born is a 3 out of 5. Hopefully the next book I'll be talking about will be a little bit better, but that is for next week. But I'll delve into that next week. Until then, I would like to say thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed this review, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the book itself or to my review of it, that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. My books, the first of my own Heir to the Empire series, The Next Generation and A Path Not Taken, are available at various book retailers under their respective master links in the description down below. Right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. I also have a second channel where you can see me talking about whatever crosses my mind, though it'll typically still be related to narrative analyses, but of works outside of the print medium. So if that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and check it out. If, however, you want to hear more about my thoughts on the print medium and selected works therein, well then I suggest you stay on this channel and go through my extensive backlog, covering not just book reviews, but also writing advice and miscellaneous connected topics. If that doesn't interest you either, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was it for me. So until next time, I am Jonathan Taylor, and this has been the Heir's Lair.